AZOPALIX 9, May 11th. And AZOPALIX implies things happening fast. Apocalypse implies them happening like all at once, kind of in a cascade. But I'm flipping that and I'm saying we're making things happen. So it's not going to happen to us. We have to make it happen. That's the word AZOPALIX. And um, it seems frivolous. And it kind of, I'm trying to put some levity into the situation because we really do have like uh, a global crisis. It's developing quite rapidly and from many different angles. People are talking about the AI running away with different things, with the economy, with the fact that our resources are, the whole thing. I don't need to go into it. And you have all the prophecies and people that believe in the spirit angles, but then everybody's practice is in the strict material realm where all of these spirit visions are not really respected fully. They're thought, yeah, nice story. Let's get back to work, back to business. I need to make some money so I can pay my landlord and then have enough money to buy food from I don't even know where, all strangers. And then that's the people agree and that's okay. And how do you change that? And I'm saying that people believe, I think this might be also China is in us, the modern world itself, where it came from exactly. At a certain point, I think empire became materialistic, and even the Roman Empire started twisting the spirit information of the culture. And there's something right there that we gloss over as a modern world is the fact that we don't really have a spirit story that we live by. We have spirit stories that we tell ourselves at night to feel better, but it's not how we run our business or our lives. Or now, that's turned into a big left versus right thing, and the right is the one that's saying, "Hey, man, we need to have a spirit story," and they're correct about that. And the fact is that let's picture some of these UFOs coming over here. I would dare say that they've reached their level of technology without getting as materialistic as we've become on this planet. As I say, we're talking as if it's all possible, and I'm already calling it that I'm from the art planets. The many things result from disclosure, but one of them is that we get to really consider ourselves in the context of global culture, as opposed to, and then think, how are we really managing this planet? And clearly not right, not well. We're depleting the resources, and the for short-term gain in little pockets that doesn't even serve the sustenance of a coherent community, let alone whole. But so we have belief systems, and then we put them at home. People believe in spirits, so their job is gonna work out now. All of, like without thinking that the freaking job, and they have a split in their lives, which is encoded in. But again, the right wing is taking this statement, the separation of church and state. It happened. This is kind of a Christian country. There's no denying it got established by Christian culture, by a Christian culture. Now there were a lot of different sects. So they didn't want to impose one particular one. And they also were Enlightenment post religious. They were trying to understand the scientific side. That was also, now I'm talking from the left back to the right. Church and state separation. There's interesting aspect about that. But you can go too far with that. You can go too far with that to the place of denying spirit as a factor. And the thing is, we lost our connection to it, but some of us seem to have a connection to it. That's what's coming up in my world, is that I'm trying to share a spirit understanding, and then that I've gained from following. I'm going to keep going with the Buddhite, Jehovahite, and Materialite way of discussing the three dominant storylines. And I came from a kind of materialite, got to a place of meditation, and then did some Buddhite practices where the materialite thing got me to pure nihilism, where I just reduced myself to the back of my head as a point of receptivity. That sounds like a spirit practice, but that's a pure, like, pragmatic understanding from a nihilistic materialist perspective. That all the values that I was like things I liked had to do with the relativistic circumstances, and none of it was transcendent necessarily. And finally, you reduce all that, and I was using techniques from the Buddhite realm, which includes shamanistic vision quest. I started fasting at a certain point, and also the idea of focusing on pain is a way to focus your consciousness as not the pain. It's in your body, so that's if you can get to the pain is not you, then you can get to your body is not you. And I got to that as a 16-year-old at the oldest prep school in America, also the most prestigious. And I was tops in my class, among 1%. Also in sports and activism, though I won the triple crown or whatever they call that. It's a prize they give, and I had that wrapped up ever since grade school. I was football captain in grade school, and getting straight A's and nobody. And then they transferred me to this fancy prep school on Fifth and 89th, where John Kerry got kicked out. That's when I started rubbing with the elites here, and I talk about how I know the elites, and I got into Phillips Andover, where it's the Bush people and a lot of other elites, and I ended up dropping out of Harvard. I didn't really even apply consciously. My point is, I come with a certain level of credentials, and from my generation, the last of the 60s visionaries into the 70s, where some of us were trying to make that practical. How does this work? And I put that up as a question to how the hell does this work? And I had a couple of visions. One of them I called Dream of Sentient Corporations. Utopia Village, Dream of Sentient Corporations. I've described that one in 75 at Harvard. But I dropped out after that because the visioning was more compelling. I've mentioned all this. And now we're to a place where I've kind of been validated. I've been talking UFO. Yeah, I actually saw the first one I saw was in third grade. It was a little red dot of light in broad daylight. I was walking home from grade school in Queens before I transferred in fourth grade, commuting an hour and a half in the mornings. Yeah, as a fourth grader. You see where I'm getting some of my psychology. And it was a dot of light in the sky above Queens, zipping around, bing, 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 gone. I'm like, okay. Yeah, I'm not going to mention that then. But since then, and I've always had a sense, and even an interesting sense, just before it was even more confirmed later with certain visionings and such, and even more recently, this thing in the sky. I'll put up a photo of that. That I seem to have some kind of connection to my own spirit life. And at a certain point, I had a very clear vision of previous lives, one which was directed and guided. And suddenly I'm been validated by some of that. But the crux of my visioning was that all of this comes together and how that actually applies practically, because that's the point. We're in this crisis mode right now, and you have, excuse me, these stories that are mythic, but all of our means and kind of metaphysical, but all of our means of dealing with it are strictly materialized. And not only that, we're not working coherently for the greater good. All of our political structures are aligned for resource consumption maximization. That's not a good strategy for living gracefully on a planet. But how did we get there? Competitively, we got there. There's a storyline of that. I didn't want to get into all this. What I wanted to try to get into is the idea that we've got practical solutions to this. And they align with some of the spirit, the idea that we can come back as a oneness. Yeah, but now make that practical. Well, look, if you're afraid of losing your rights to a government that's trying to impose all these values, the way to do it, it's like simplifying it, is you already have all these values incorporated into your business and you're doing your business. So they can't buy. There's a lot of rules that defend what businesses do. So if businesses decided to just step up and instead of being about taking a bunch of resources, extracting them, and running away with the profits, and then trying to use those to buy into some other people's scams for what they need, instead of that, get a little more wise up a little more. You get to the fact that you could be thinking strategically about resource use as a community. This is how tribes used to work. And it makes sense, but it also makes sense that we're in this place of maximum, I'm trying to keep the timing, of maximum competition and all this, and the consequences of getting to this place and not dealing with it. Because all along, and it happened really fast, another thing, came up on everybody really fast in the last couple hundred years. We've gone from industrialization to ready to crash the whole planet, and all our responses are still in the realm of individual careers and people trying to make a profit on their thesis about what's wrong and what are we going to do. Well, maybe we tinker here, we tinker there, and yet we have different ways of making change. Politics, that's a slow way of making change. Fast way of making change, a business steps up and says, here's what we're doing, and blah blah blah, you start doing it. Now, can we get enough people to jump outside of their little tribe? Especially, I'm thinking Rich and the rest of us, or in venture capital and workers. There was a time in America when, and also in Spain, they almost kept it together when the management and workers and owners stayed on the same page and thought instead that they were a resource to the community, and started thinking you can, if you do that right, all of the values of democracy, direct democracy, are incorporated into a well-run, community-based resource grounding venture, which you could call a business. It's what it is. It's a business. It's got all the protections of a business. And I'm saying if you want to defend against all the fears people have of, the observer state, you're afraid of the observer. The observer state, what? They're tracking your purchasing habits so they can sell you more goodies. Everything's about selling you more. That's all that is. So don't buy into it. That's all you got to do about that. No worries. And otherwise, they want to track anybody that thinks they want to try to blow something up. It's like, well, why would? So again, there's another thing. There's nothing about us versus them that really makes sense here. Even though I'm coming from a place, and I'm wearing my red hat, but I'm wearing my purple glasses. Whoop. Is this my MAGA hat? Well, I am talking to the MAGA because the blue has lost their minds. They used to be the red, which is calling everybody that wasn't Christian evil. Now it's the blue that isn't calling anybody that hates Trump evil. Anybody that doesn't hate Trump is now automatically misogynist, racist, and that's so far from true. Both of those are so far from true. I happen to know Trump. And my dad actually put the Gucci in the Trump Towers. You can see it's the first thing you see on the left as you walk in. But we're utopian visionaries, both of us, me and Dad, about making this world work for everybody. And he had a company of 30 people, and it was beautiful. He helped everybody do their thing. And at the same time, he was the boss. He kept enough money to contribute to my seemingly lit path towards what am I supposed to do with all of my assets here. Well, I haven't chosen to do a personal career, and at a certain point, White Bear being channeled by someone from Santa Fe, hey Mike, you're a planet healer and you don't get women. See, I already knew that the whole family thing was going to take me sideways. And what I'm trying to do here is make it clear that our way back to sanity is in the economic arena. And I was going to break out the thought that if you go away from from for-profit ventures to ones that involve building community and weaving sustainable resource, then you think in terms of well, what can this whole block of neighbors here do to maybe collectivize their debts and assets and get out from under that? And there's already companies that are profiteering on that, but they're profiteering on we'll take on whoever strangers and do that, but we're going to take a little nip. Yeah, you stop doing business with strangers. None of us need to be strangers. We're all family, but we need to make those connections real. And this happens in the business world. and I came, I wanted to maybe get more specific and practical with this one, but there's a whole set of things we could be asking AI. Hey, AI, how can a handful of us pull our thing together and start connecting a resource space? What are the local companies that come close to doing what we need in terms of food? How much permaculture can we grow in our backyard that feeds us? These are questions for AI, maybe, instead of like, how can I cheat on my homework? But it's about stepping up to responsibility. And every time we're pointing fingers, we're not being responsible. And the pointing fingers might be a way to analyze how we got here, but it's not a way how we're going forward, because we got to talk to the 60%, the elite that owns 60% of the resources. You can't get around that. Plus, it wouldn't be making it heaven on earth if we skipped any of the divergences. We got to bring it back to a real felt unity.